Hello and welcome to Autism Awareness Australia's Ought to Know webinar series. I'm your host, Nicole Hurley. I'm the Head of Partnerships here at AAA, and I'm also the parent of a tween on the spectrum. This webinar is part of a monthly series, and today we're focusing on the adult years and specifically the dating code. This webinar series is proudly sponsored by Chill for Autism. Chill is an evidence-based social skills coaching program for young adults on the spectrum. Joining me today are two powerhouse women, Helen Whelan and Jodie Rogers. Welcome, ladies. Helen brings a unique blend of healthcare and arts expertise, 12 years as a registered nurse, 18 years in the healthcare business development sector, and 14 years in the arts. She's a devoted autism advocate and mother to a 29-year-old son on the spectrum. Helen, in her spare time, is studying at Griffith University's Autism Centre of Excellence, and she's the co-founder of Chill for Autism. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you.
Along with Helen is Jodie Rogers, a qualified sexologist, counsellor and special education teacher with over 30 years experience in disability, sexuality and education. Founder of Birds and Bees, her practice provides accessible sexuality and relationship counselling for people with disabilities. She is featured on as a relationship specialist on the Emmy Award-winning series Love on the Spectrum. And in her spare time, she's an international author. She has recently launched her book, Unique, What Autism Can Teach Us About Difference, Connection and Belonging. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for your time. Today, we're going to talk about dating and relationships. So we've got so much to talk about and so much to cover. For attendees, we do have a Q&A, so pop your questions in there and we'll try to get to them at the end. If not, we will. You can always email us at office@autismawareness.com.au. Dating and relationships. So navigating that can be really overwhelming for our autistic people and their parents and carers, with unwritten social rules, all sorts of mixed signals and hormones and emotions. Where do we even start? Jodie, I'm going to start with you. So what are some of the challenges our autistic people face when they first start dating? And is there any strategies that you recommend to help them overcome those hurdles?
Yeah, I think the starting stage is probably what I find the most complex and difficult. So for many people, particularly if they have social anxiety, even where do you meet people? Joining in on groups. So there's at the moment, research is saying that younger people are meeting people in three places. So they're meeting people by joining in on activities, which can be complex for autistic people. They're meeting people through, if they're participating in TAFE or work. And as we know, that can also be complex for many autistic people. And the third place is on dating apps, which also is a difficult area to navigate. So for me, the first step is always actually finding out if somebody is ready to start the dating journey, where are they actually going to meet new people and how wide is their network for meeting new people. So that's usually the first starting point. The other one I always check in on is, does a person actually have a trusted friend where they've already practiced the skills of dating? Because, of course, if you want to go date on a date, then you have to be able to ask somebody out independently, go out with that person, know how to, thinking about where you would go, the environments that you go to. So really those first starting points are just checking in on where that person is now, at what point in their life.
And Jodie, like as a parent, we're worried about mobile apps and technology, and that's, those apps are a place where meaningful connections can happen, whether it's dating or friendships. What are some of the hurdles, or have you heard of success on those? But then what are the hindrances of those apps as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's like for any person, in any online interaction, whether that's through social media or, apps for chatting or dating apps, they all have positives and they've all got negatives. But this is the world now. This is how many, many people interact with each other. And for many autistic people, it's actually a really lovely environment. Like that online interaction is incredibly supportive for many people. So it's like with anything. Of course, we have to keep up with modern times. So all we should be doing is educating people about what are the dangers and how to protect yourself, what information we share online with somebody, what things do we never, ever do, what things do we do. So we can't stop people. There's no way we can go, no, don't go on dating apps, because if you're a 20-year-old at the moment, that's where people are interacting. So it's really just about, it's about thinking about what the risks are, and then educating somebody to say, look, we don't give out personal information to anybody else. We never give money to anybody online. Also educating people about how you can actually check in whether the person you're communicating with is a real person or whether they're a bot, how to recognise a scam. The other thing I always think about too is people can go onto dating apps, and we all would go into it enthusiastically thinking the first person we swipe right on and connect with is going to be the absolute love of our life. But what we do know about dating apps is it takes an incredible amount of resilience. And so I always talk to people about the fact that how many people do we have to talk to before that might actually move into a face-to-face date? What are the things we need to because you have to be quite resilient. A lot of people burn out on dating apps. So we have to go into educating people about dating apps in a real way, not saying, yep, you're going to meet someone, it's going to be the love of your life on the first hit, because that's not the reality.
Yeah, definitely. And Helen, as a parent, how do you support, or have you heard from parents about supporting their young people on the dating apps and making sure, like Jodie said, checking in with them to make sure that, they're not talking to a robot or a scammer?
Absolutely. So, as a parent, it's hard because you're not wanting to, parent from a helicopter and be watching every move, but you're also wanting to make sure your loved one is safe. So there's a balance there, but to keep the conversation going with your young person is what we all parents in our community talk about. How do we keep our conversations going so we're not treading on toes, but we're there to be able to talk about the stuff like safety as reminders to our young adult. And that's really important, because if you have that established, then you can be sure that if things get edgy, that you're there to be able to help and go, hey, I'm not sure this situation is safe. Let's go over here. Let's move away from that.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think you see a role of special interests or hobbies playing a role in that, sparking connections, whether it be online or outside of, online spaces, to either form a romantic or a platonic relationship?
Absolutely. So if I talk from the Chill Social Skills Program perspective, the first thing we do at Chill with all of our participants are called Chillies, is we look at what we love doing, and then we find who else loves the same stuff, because the stage is already set for a connection. So special interests are so important, because that's where it all begins. And that's where it's safe for our young adults to take those social risks to connect with someone when they're first starting out, forming friendships, particularly post-school, when maybe they haven't had a great experience. That's really important. And it's also important because you've got to form friendships before you start relationships, romantic relationships. It's got to start there. So having something in common, but also knowing it's okay to have lots of things that aren't in common. And we find lots of our Chillies go, well, I don't like football, I'm not hanging out with him. And then it actually is something that person can learn about and enjoy as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned rejection, and, friendships can be tricky, and dating can be tricky. Like you said, Jodie, your first swipe might not be your forever love. How do you handle those setbacks or rejections and build resilience in friendship misunderstandings or dating setbacks?
Yeah, in my work, I spend a lot of time actually building people's confidence, because the other thing we have to recognise that for people to be ready to date, but having, intact self-esteem and self-confidence is really, really important. I always use that analogy of saying, if you go to the supermarket when you're hungry, then we buy junk. And it's exactly the same if in the dating world, that if you go out desperately seeking, then often you're going to attract, not great people around you. So it's actually building somebody's confidence. But the other part of it is rejection is part of the human experience. And for many autistic people that I work with, they have experienced a lot of rejection, social rejection, as part of their life experience. And so being able to help them build up that resilience to know that rejection is also part of the dating world, but to recognize constantly that if somebody rejects you, it really has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the match between you. So that all of that resilience in dating has to be built in for somebody's understanding, to have that confidence. Go, actually, this is not about me. This is about whether this other person and I are right for each other. Because a lot of people, as soon as they experience that first rejection, take that on in a big way and then go back to, it must be me, I must be the problem, what's wrong with me, and have a lot of negative self-talk. So, there's a lot of preparation that needs to go into for all of us.
Yeah.
Every single person, there's a lot of preparation that needs to go into prior to the first step of going on dates or seeking, a romantic and intimate relationship. There's some preparation that has to go in beforehand.
And then I guess, Jodie, also building the skills, like if you want to be the rejecter, like if you're not feeling comfortable or you're not seeing, some mutual sparks or interests, and how do you build the confidence so they can be empowered to make those decisions for themselves, to walk away from that date or walk away from that conversation or friendship?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff about recognizing the characteristics of something that isn't healthy. And that when you recognize that, how do you then withdraw from that situation, and do that with respect for the other person? But it's also, as we know, this has a lot of scripting involved in it. There's a lot of things that we learn to say. It's also, the modern world, it's also teaching people what is ghosting. Why do people ghost? What is a flake in a date? Because there's a whole modern world that's happening out there that we have to support people to understand what that looks like. And dating's like, ghosting's really common. Like a lot of people say with dating apps, it's like over 70% of people have experienced ghosting. So it's sort of also educating the wider community about how you can actually respectfully say to somebody, it's been lovely meeting you, I'm just not interested. This has been great, but I don't think we have enough in common. So, all of that has to be prepared. But the most important part of that is actually educating people to recognise when somebody is not a good match for them, and that it is perfectly okay to say to somebody else, look, I don't think that this is going to be working out. Because if you keep staying in something that isn't going to be great, then you actually limit yourself for the possibility of what could be the next person, which could be the great relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So insightful there, Jodie. I'm going to ask you both, because you spend a lot of time with adults and young adults. How do you think an autistic person should approach sharing their diagnosis with a potential partner or a date? And what are things that they need to consider? Is it something they talk about on the first date? Do they hold it? And you may have some examples of what people have done.
Do you want to answer that, Helen?
Yeah, I'll have a go. So we talk a lot about this at Chill. So some of our chilies say, oh, I tell someone straight up, I'm neurodivergent, and so you might find me a bit quirky, but I'm cool, and so on and so on. Others go, oh, no way, I'm not going there, or they'll just say no and it'll all be over, and I really want this to work. What we do is encourage the voice of each young adult, and then help them to navigate how they're going to manage that if it's an issue for them. Because every single one is different, every single young adult is different. So it's really helping them then to decide, is this something you want to share? Okay, so a bit further down the track, if you feel like there's a connection, how do you want to share that?
Mm.
And it's really that's a really personal one-on-one thing that our chilies do with their mentors.
And I guess timing is all right, and how they're comfortable they feel. Jodie, do you have a perspective on it?
It's very individualistic as our identity is. So, I have people that are filled with autistic pride. And so they might even put that on a profile, or they're straight up with it to say, I'm an autistic individual, straight, no qualms about it. I have other people that feed that information slowly to somebody. If they feel that the person they're meeting doesn't really have an understanding of what an autistic experience is, then it's sort of sharing information with another person about how we see the world. And we all do this when we're developing relationships with somebody. We say, oh, when I communicate, this is the way that I understand in a better way, or when I speak like this, it's because my brain works really fast, or I get overwhelmed in environments. You can feed that information to somebody if you're not ready to just be right up saying I'm an autistic person. You feed the information slowly, and then you give that person an overall picture of yourself, and then you can say, oh, all these things that I've been sharing with you, that's because I'm autistic. But it's what Helen was saying too. It is so individualistic and where a person is in their journey and their identity and how they like to speak about themselves. So there's no right or wrong way of this. And of course, there's young people that grow up their whole lives saying, I'm autistic, and they've been filled with great pride in being an autistic person. And there's other people's experience where they may not have had a diagnosis until they're in their 20s or 30s, and they're still getting to understand themselves. So there's no right or wrong, and it's a completely individualistic thing.
Yeah, 100%. And you touched about, people talking about, their likes and dislikes. As we know, a lot of autistic people have some sensory sensitivities. Whether you're on a first date or you're in an established relationship, how do you create respectful environments to cater to your needs, but also particularly your partner's, whether that be in an intimate situation or sort of less casual?
Think compromise is the hardest thing for all humans, isn't it? It's really, really difficult. And I think there's more and more people in our community, and I've got my fingers crossed in this, that we're all understanding that our experience of the world and our sensory needs do differ. So it's the same, it's sort of helping people to negotiate any differences that we have. So whether that's sort of going out to a restaurant where one person loves a certain food, another person doesn't. How are we going to do that? With one person may need really quiet environments and another person needs much more active, loud environments. It's all about negotiation. The first point is actually knowing yourself, but really 100% knowing what your needs are and what things will be okay for you and how you can communicate and articulate that to another person. And then the negotiation, as we know, is the most difficult component of that, because then what are you willing to move towards so that that other person also is getting what their requirements are? There's definitely parts that people say, oh, I just cannot do that. And that's a no-go. That's a really important boundary. And that's another really integral part of all of this, is actually when we establishing boundaries, it's what are my needs that I just go, no, that is a no-go area, but also having to respect another person's boundaries. Like, what is these boundaries all about? Because it's not just about my boundaries, it also has to be me respecting another person's boundaries.
And I guess that can be tricky when a lot of dating relationships, depending on who you're with, whether it's a neurotypical person or another autistic person, that could be quite challenging if people are giving off signals thinking that that's communicating. So what you'll get given from someone else might not be so obvious. So that might be tricky, right?
Yeah. I think I probably talk about mixed signals every day of the week, every single day, because, there's people that might say, oh, they rubbed my arm. They must really like me. But it's actually, as we know, that somebody touching you on the arm can mean lots and lots of different things depending on who that person is, what the touch was like, what the context is. So sometimes helping people really break down the nuance of how another person is giving information, and also um, being able to advocate for self, being able to say, look, I actually find understanding another person's gesture and body language really complex. So I need you to be blunt and concrete with me about what your feelings are. That's hard. It's very, very hard to actually be assertive in your communication, to be able to say, I need you to do this to another person. But that's another part of my job that I do every single day. You know, helping a person to be able to articulate what their needs are to another person.
And thank God you do the job that you do, Jodie, because I'm thinking, where does my son go to get this advice? Helen, can you share what inspired you to create the New Romance program, and what are you seeing with, the young Chilies? What's happening in those sessions that is driving a lot of that self-confidence and self-advocacy in that space?
Sure. So New Romance came about because many of our Chilies who've been coming to Chill for years now, 6+ years, we started noticing, well, they were all talking about relationships and romance and all of that stuff, of course, in that demographic, young adult demographic. But also, as our Chilies have sort of found this tribe and created this tribe themselves, they've all started being online on Discord, all sorts of social media, and they're messaging and serial messaging each other, and then annoying each other, and then having to pull back and then going, what do you mean? And all that stuff that Jodie was referring to. And we started going, oh my God, what have we created here? We've got all these young adults with so much confidence now, but we need to provide something around this whole relationships area. And we know from research and all Jodie's work that this is a critical thing for our young adults. So New Romance came from basically that need, as well as our parents, our hundreds of parents like myself going, my son wants a partner. He wants love, he wants sex, he deserves it, he wants everything. He wants to understand gender and identity, and there's nothing. So that's where New Romance came from. Unfortunately, Jodie came on board and wrote the program. We got together and put that program together. We are halfway through our first semester. We're almost halfway through. It's going gangbusters. I've accidentally walked in a couple of times on a break, and then I've ran out the door again when I've heard certain phrases and gone, whoa. And what I've noticed is the sharing and connecting, because everyone wants this. They want the knowledge. They want to know about consent. They want to know how to do this so that they're successful. And because they're working with peer mentors, so same-aged fellow travellers in the program, all experiencing it together, they're just growing in confidence and loving sharing their curiosity in this whole space of relationships.
And that's so important, isn't it? To feel safe in having those conversations with people the same age, and, nothing's off the table. What have they enjoyed so far the most that maybe have surprised you when you put the program together?
Look, they have a lot of fun. So we do a lot of creative play, and that's just to get the dopamine going and all feeling confident, ready to take social risks in things like role plays and stuff. I hear things like sexually transmitted disease game show, come on down, and they're all having a game show around all sorts of stuff like that. They have a lot of fun with. But look, it's so connecting. I think that's the big ticket item for this, is the connections they're forming, because they're all happy to share their anxiety about this whole space.
And you're hearing from them firsthand what they're concerned about, what they're worried about. What are some of the parents concerned about with this age group?
Oh, strike. There's a list this long. We were talking the other night, our parents call themselves Chips, chill parents. And we had a night on Friday night, a pizza and wine night. And some of the things that we were sharing in our chats were things like, my son, he just wants to have sex. He's 32. He wants to say he's had sexual intercourse. And it's like, what am I going to say? What do I do? And then others are saying, look, my daughter's trying to work out where she's at in terms of gender identity and all that sort of stuff. So there's so many things around what if I don't want to go there, and the whole consent stuff. And, it's parents are at this stage, I feel, are quite anxious for their person to have a safe relationships and safe experience. Because what every parent wants, you just want your person to be loved and feel that somebody loves them when we're gone.
Yeah, definitely. And Jody, do you see a lot in your practice whilst you're supporting the person with a disability or autism? Are you helping the parents along that journey? Do you do tailored plans with the whole of family to help support that person?
I really work with people who are 16 plus. And what Helen was saying is I try and relate everything in my work to, if this was Joe Bloggs down the street, 19-year-old, would he really want his mum in this session? And the answer is often no. And remember, I work in clinical practice. So what I usually say, if somebody has difficulties retaining information or generalising information, and because I see people clinically, I will always say to anyone come and seeing me, would you like to bring a trusted person with you? Now, I'm telling you, the majority of people I see do not bring a parent with them. They bring a trusted support worker. And as Helen was saying, one of the reasons that this is being so successful is because it is peer mentors that are actually delivering this training. So I think I always try and relate it to, would I, when I was, well, even the age I am now, would I talk to my mum about some of these things? So, of course, parents are so integrally important in all of this, and parents really need a lot of support to ease their anxiety, to know what's going on. But it's also us, as parents, keeping ourselves in the generation that these younger people are, or where these people are in their life steps, so that we're not, I had a parent saying, I just don't understand why my child can't go to a Friday night dance and meet someone. Well, they're putting themselves back in how they met their partner a long time ago. So it's helping parents to stay. And also, I think Helen touched on it as well. Of course, anxiety exists. But it exists for parents of young autistic people or autistic people across your whole lifespan. So, I'm sure that anxiety existed when your child first went to childcare or first went to school or takes any of those steps towards a greater independence. But what I know is that once people have left school and they're moving into an adult world, then this is our sexuality and our intimate romantic relationships are part of a life.
Yeah.
And so it's about supporting people to go, okay, I know you're anxious, but a lot of parents are anxious of the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Constantly going and catastrophizing. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And I'm constantly saying, but what if?
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
What if this is a wonderful experience? What if this person meets somebody or meets several people, or, so it's sort of turning the anxiety around to say, let's not catastrophize and go to the what if bad. Let's actually say, if we really educate people, if we really give them all of the resources and information that they need and the support required, then the what if is going to be, what if this is fabulous?
Yeah. And I guess
So
that's
I always like to
hard.
focus on the
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it might be hard from a parent perspective, because when you're in that young adolescence, the sex education at school and home, and then they become this adult and they're navigating these relationships. And it's the time that parents step back and they're not, as involved day to day. And in those conversations, you kind of get that shut out from maybe your kids. So that might be a hard
But
group of parents
that's
to,
life. That's
yeah, I
that's
know.
life for any parent, no matter who
Yeah.
your child is. All we can do as a parent of any child is give that person as much information and as much knowledge and as much guidance as we possibly can, and the capacity to take risks and learn from those risks across a lifetime. And then, as a parent, as hard as it is, you have to kind of take the step back, fingers crossed, and just go, okay, off you go into this wonderful world.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing. And I'm not taking away from the experience of many parents of autistic young people who spent a lifetime just wishing and hoping that every single step is successful. And sometimes they're not. And so we can't take away from the anxiety that many parents experience. But I'm telling you, the greatest joy I see is when an autistic adult actually goes, I'm making an independent decision about my life as an adult. It's a beautiful thing to see.
And I bet, Helen, you see that every day too.
Absolutely. And as a parent, I completely concur with Jodie that when you see a young adult, when I see my son making a choice and going with it, and I had nothing to do with it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is
Yeah, amazing.
great. Oh my God. And I have to hold myself back from going, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah,
I have to
yeah.
pull all that back and just let him do life and not dive in there with a bit of feedback and you go and all that, and just let him do it. And yeah, it's great. It's amazing then.
Amazing. I reckon we could talk about this all day and get into some really juicy topics of this, but we do have a question, a comment and a question from our attendees, and it's to you, Jodie. I'm a 37-year-old autistic man here, diagnosed 3 years ago, and he wanted to thank you, Jodie, for your book. It was brilliant. The way it was written has really helped my fiance understand and support me better. To me, you're a superhero. I'm actually getting married in May. Any advice to help make it last, and any advice on how to move forward after being ostracized by his parents when he got his diagnosis?
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Really, really sorry to hear that. That's your parents not having knowledge of how absolutely brilliant an autistic neurology is, really. I think that's congratulations, by the way, getting married soon. I think longevity is always a hard one. People sometimes think, yes, we got married, it's all going to be sunshine and roses from here on in. But relationships are hard work. And when I say hard work, they come with a lot of joy and beauty, but people change over a lifetime. And so it's the constant navigation with a partner as your worlds develop to keep that communication going. And I do couples counselling, and I love this part of my job, particularly, I could do couples counselling where both of the couple are autistic, or one person is neurotypical, one person's autistic or neurodivergent, and just learning constantly how to give space for those really important conversations is integral, and making sure that you're constantly remembering that two people see the world from a very, very different perspective and point of view. And the hardest part of this whole experience of being a human is, how do we actually support one another to understand each other's perspectives and point of view. It sounds like you've got a wonderful partner, and I'm pretty sure that things will be successful for the fact that you are educating yourself and your partner is also educating themselves. That's a really fantastic foundation.
So good. Thank you, Jodie. Another question from the group. Starting post-school, when school was not a social success and no friendships held over, is hard. Trying to find a supportive place is hard as a parent. Resilience is low. Any ideas?
You do that, Helen. You'll know that experience well.
Well, I mean, gosh, well, that's why Chill was set up, because, of course, we don't all go, well, firstly, many of our neurodivergent young people have a rotten time at school, not everyone, but many do, and leave school and are quite traumatized from bullying and all that sort of stuff. Chill was set up as a pathway from high school or from school, as an alternative to going to work, tertiary studies, apprenticeships, whatever, as a capacity and skill building community of neurodivergent young people to connect and actually, for the first time, maybe enjoy friends. And so Chill is about people firstly coming into a non-disability environment and connecting and realizing that everyone is interested in hearing about you. And so we find our young adults settle into that and then start to go, wow, I think I'm making some actual friends here, some genuine, authentic friends. And on top of that is the building of the skills that are tough to try and navigate the neurotypical world. And I mean, that's what Chill's there for. I wish I could say it was in many places for people to be able to access and build that community, because that's what's needed, is finding a place where you can actually feel safe. You're not in a disability environment, but you're also working out, how am I going to get what I need from this neurotypical world so I can be happy and have great friendships and relationships.
Yeah, 100%, Helen. And we've got a lot of great information and resources on our website around dating, relationships, information for autistic people and information for our parents and carers. So feel free to head over there to autismawareness.com.au. Unfortunately, that comes to the end of our time today. Like I said, we could be on here for days and maybe we'll do our next session on a little bit more of the juicy parts. But I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, particularly Helen and Jodie, for all your tips, your expertise and advice. It's a lot to unpack. We'll be rewatching this for all those tips and heading to those resources. To the attendees, we will send this recording out in the coming days, so keep an eye out for it in your inbox. And like I said, for more evidence-based information, head over to our website, autismawareness.com.au, and also on our YouTube, subscribe to see this video and other video content that we have up there. Thanks again to our sponsor, Chill for Autism, because without supporting these conversations, we wouldn't be here. And we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks so much for joining.